Check it out, coming up on 30,000 subscribers. iShowSpeed is now facing a lawsuit after a viral live stream where he was seen hitting and shaking a humanoid robot. And if you're wondering how you can sue somebody for this because there's only one human involved, it's the robot company suing for the repair costs. One thing I haven't thought about with self-driving cars is when a woman who ordered a Waymo found an actual person in the trunk, hiding out in there.
Are you in the trunk?
That's why, man, I'm trying to figure this out. Like, I'm over here. Yeah, this shit won't let me out. This shit
Why are you in it?
What in the world is that guy doing in the trunk of a Waymo? So many questions. Dan clearly seems to have put up an article on Medium with, I guess, technically no title. I mean, no one that I see here, but it's fascinating nonetheless in the body of the text because he argues that the universe isn't random chaos, but it shows deep numerical structure in its fundamental constants. We'll dive in. Also, we'll look at Glenn Bochard's thoughts about why we only have artificial intelligence in the form of artificial special intelligence right now. And he predicts that humanity will not cause its own extinction. So that comes as a relief to me. The Neuron had a really interesting breakdown of how Microsoft and Google are kind of going different routes in their attempt to be the first to AGI. And considering it's Mustafa Suleyman and it's Demis Hassabis, who both co-founded DeepMind, it's sort of interesting. They come from such a similar place and they've taken these different paths. And when you get your head around it, it's not quite clear which one's going to be better. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But it's fun to talk strategy. We're looking into Alex Shapiro's blog about how he reverse engineered a $1 billion legal AI tool and found 100,000 confidential files. New research coming out of the Pew Research Organization turns out 62% of single women have given up on men. So if you're curious, what does a smart single feminist woman want from a man today? I'll break it down for you. Or at least I'll tell you what Linda Carroll told me, because it's above my pay grade. Control over the algorithm of any social network has been this huge pet peeve of mine forever. I need an algorithm that doesn't tempt me. So this is a step in the right direction. It's not perfect because it's Instagram, but we'll talk about it. I'll share a story about how Google's healthcare AI made up a body part, and turns out doctors didn't even notice. Yeah, I called it a typo. Experts say it demonstrates the risk of AI in medicine. It's a little of both. But now it's time to hit that hype button. If you do that for me, it would really mean a lot. All right, quick message to all my creators out there. If you've been intimidated by animation or 3D work, you're gonna love this. This is Domo AI, and it basically gives you the power of a full animation studio in your browser. Now let me show you why these tools have exploded this year. You can take any idea, cyberpunk city, fantasy battle, coffee shop story, whatever it is, and Domo AI will turn it into a fully animated video. And not those low effort, blurry AI clips that you see on some random TikTok account. I'm talking about clear motion, expressive character movement, and textures that look hand painted. But my favorite feature is the video to video magic. You can shoot a 5-second clip on your phone, upload it, and instantly transform yourself into an anime protagonist, a comic book hero, or a Pixar-style character. It's wild seeing all the comparisons. And for creatives who are building brands or clients, this will save you hours. You can prototype visual ideas, storyboards, concepts, all without touching Blender, After Effects, or any of the heavy software. Domo AI has also been rolling out new models constantly, which is why the quality keeps jumping up every few weeks. Domo AI is a suite of AI-powered tools improving at a rapid pace. And if you want to try it out, use the link below for a 10% discount and create your own animated video today. And thanks again to Domo AI for supporting the channel. And now let's get back to all of these crazy AI updates. And we'll start with this is a more interesting attack on robots. Like, we've seen a bunch of people demonstrating how resilient they are by pushing them around, hitting them with sticks. It's never been a good look. It's always kind of given me the ick, even though I sort of know it's not the same as doing it to a human. There's just something culturally that bugs me. Obviously, I'm not the only one. A whole bunch of people online thought that iShowSpeed was kind of over the line when he's challenging Rizbot, getting all pissed. I don't know if he's just joking or acting, or it's part of getting attention, or he actually was like just triggered. He hurt the robot, and they thought it was kind of uncalled for, so they're suing him. The robotic company who owns Rizbot was like, hey, you need to pay for the damages. As it says here, the case has sparked a wider debate on responsibility when creators and social media personalities interact with these high-value robots, especially when these moments are broadcast to millions online. What do you think? Do you think he's influencing people to be more aggressive than they should be to robots? If he was just yelling at a brick wall, I don't think anyone would have sued him, right? So if that's what you think it just looks like a human, then maybe that's okay in your book, or maybe it's entertaining, interested in your thoughts. But yeah, even if sort of logically I know it's sort of a robot, it says, is this what we're teaching robots? I've never been so embarrassed to be human. I realized how Einstein succeeded. He succeeded because he read the Bible. Okay. By the way, I plan to study all other religions. Nice, bro. All right, so here's another weird one. Waymo, self-driving cars, although they don't have drivers. So in theory, I understand how a person could have snuck into the trunk and not been seen. They're also highly surveilled. You have AI that can see all sorts of people outside of the car so you don't hit them. And I'm sure there's a camera in the car watching passengers to make sure the right people get in the car. So this seems like a solved problem. Now, this probably happens once. This woman gets in a Waymo, finds a creepy dude like curled up in the trunk with no explanation for what he's doing there. He said, they put me here. They didn't put you there, bro. Like, you put yourself there. It's just such a crazy thought, you know? Okay. So next up, let's dive into some of Dan Clearly's work. And by the way, just because I can see the actual domain and the URL afterwards, it says the universe might be a construct, and I can show you why. So I'm pretty sure that's the title of this article, even though for some reason it's not showing up for me. Point is, fascinating stuff in here. He is arguing that the physical constraints of nature are not random, but they are basically an uncanny symmetry when expressed in certain ratios. I find this stuff really fascinating, and it's almost as if they follow a hidden blueprint rather than drifting by chance. So by examining how constraints like Planck's constant, mass, gravity, length, time, charge, and energy deviate just slightly, but in a symmetrically uniform way, like a symmetrical form of unity, and sometimes they're just tiny bit off. He suggests that this balance isn't messy drift, but it's harmony embedded in the universe's structure. And it's from these dimensional relationships, familiar equations like E equals mc squared fall out naturally. And that prompts the question about whether or not the universe might be a kind of computation or a construct that's sort of rooted in minimal logical rules rather than chaos. And if so, to me, that kind of hints that we're in a simulation. It feels to me if we were to build some kind of sim-like characters in a video game and they started studying their own environment, they would see some pretty interesting almost symmetries from the way that we are computing all of the matrix multiplications that create the 3D environment for them. Obviously, I'm just making a big jump there to say it's this like because we're in a simulation, but there is a fascinating symmetry to this universe and just the tiniest bit of asymmetry to describe some of the stuff like mass around us. But you can see here at the end of the article, this isn't just mysticism, it's math. It's precision, it's the symmetry beneath the chaos, and it might be the closest we've come to reading the source code of reality. Now, this doesn't mean there's God or a programmer, but it may mean that reality bootstraps itself from first principles and that there's a mathematical seed that everything else blooms from. So like our mathematical universe, Max Tegmark would say, maybe that's everything. And he says, maybe 0 implies 1. 1 implies symmetry. Primes imply structure. Structure implies constraints, and constraints are what's needed to imply for a constant, right? So a constant would be something that has constraints on it, you know? So what do you think? Do you think the constants we use aren't arbitrary leftovers of the cosmic dice roll, but instead they're part of a blueprint or not? Leave it up to you. Next up, let's talk about artificial special intelligence. I keep wanting to say AGI, but no, special intelligence is kind of what we have now. So this is Glenn Bochart's article. He argues that AI systems that we interact with today are not general intelligence. They are specific for certain roles. Machines with human-like broad intellectual understanding is not what many of these AI systems do yet, but instead it's what he calls artificial special intelligence. This is a narrow form of generality, and he explains that despite rapid improvements in AI speed and task performance, current systems lack the holistic awareness, the deep reasoning, and the truly universal understanding that we would expect from AGI. You guys want to go look at the AGI countdown really quick? Oh gosh, I never even know anymore. Do you think it's still at 96? I hope so. Yeah, still there, getting closer. Any updates? Yeah, Gemini 3, Claude 4.5. Now, of course, I'm sure he would argue with Alan's conservative countdown to AGI, because Borchardt points out that AI today can surface information and mimic analysis, but does not genuinely understand or integrate all knowledge that's available online. It simply processes patterns with narrow domains, and he contrasts this with the idea of AGI, which would be aware of everything ever on the internet, something current AI clearly isn't. His view extends to how intelligence itself is defined as a response to environmental changes, and since current AI doesn't truly embody that across contexts, it remains, quote, special rather than, quote, general. AI, it can outperform humans in all sorts of specific things in data processing. What we were just learning about Lending Bench seems to be able to analyze things so much better than humans in some ways, but yet just drops the ball, especially on context problems. I have a super broad concept of intelligence now. I am starting to look at slime molds and mushrooms and crows and dolphins and squids and anything that solves problems, sometimes even automata that just has a simple rule that seems to create patterns. We think of what we have as humans as kind of the end-all be-all. I think it's the tiniest tip of the iceberg, and there's so many other ways, and it's going to shock us how many new ways of being intelligent we're going to discover in our lifetime. So yeah, even if we can get it to be as general as a human, it might still be narrow if you want to take the broadest view of it. All right, so next up from the newsletter, The Neuron, they had a kind of interesting article in here, a little part where it talked about Microsoft versus Google. And I kind of forgot how interesting it was that if you go back more than a decade, this is even before OpenAI showed up on the scene. You really had one leader in the whole world, the team that was DeepMind, started by Demis Hassabis and then sort of acquired / funded but left alone by Google, to pioneer so much of the research that we use today. They were the ones just doing it before everyone else, and they were funded enough with the kind of geniuses that actually cared about this problem when no one else did. Now, there were two co-founders. One of them now works at Microsoft and has access to lots of compute, sort of in a way competes with OpenAI, but they also partnered, also has this history with his competitor now over at DeepMind, funded by Google, and has access to all sorts of things. So these are two extremely smart people who have kind of came from the same leaf, the same root, I guess you would say, and they have a bit of a different vision of how to command the massive amount of resources and influence they have. So Microsoft and Google DeepMind are chasing AGI with radically different philosophies. Demis Hassabis at Google is treating AGI as a scientific breakthrough tool, something that can solve fundamental problems like fusion, superconductors, and a true physical reasoning. Now, his strategy splits effort between scaling compute and doing deep research, aiming for systems that actually understand the world and can generate new knowledge, not just remix human data. Meanwhile, Mustafa Sullivan at Microsoft is focused on building AGI as an economic engine, practical, controllable, and deployable now. He's less interested in, quote, winning AGI and more focused on rolling out reliable AI agents that replace apps, generating real economic value, and keeping humans legally and operationally in charge. So it feels like he's very practical. It feels like at Microsoft, they're just saying, build AI into tools that people will use. They'll use them. We'll have a feedback loop that will help us grow. And then that'll kind of give us the lead in the long run. It's almost like safe superintelligence, which doesn't even do a product. You know, it's almost in stealth mode, but they're just going to try to straight shot it. They say, I don't want to waste time collecting feedback and trying to build a product. I just want to get to AGI and then it solves everything else. So you have these two ends of the spectrum. Which one do you feel like is a better kind of route to apply this stuff nowadays? If someone put you in charge at Meta and said, hey, we're like redoing everything, but here's all the money and resources you need to compete with Mustafa and Demis, how would you position yourself to be different? Or would you just try to do the same philosophy but execute faster? It's so weird, the negotiating, the executing, the creating value on behalf of the people that give you money, but also knowing that you're going to be displacing jobs. There's going to be accountability. There's going to be somebody legally responsible for a world that changes really fast as machines eat the real world. And where should the companies be and how should they be held accountable? And if they make I guess, too much money? Is it unfair? Does it need to be reinvested in some way that helps the general public? A lot of interesting questions, and they have two very different philosophies, so it'll be interesting to see who wins. Or Mustafa would say it's not even a win-lose thing. There's going to be all sorts of winners in different ways. He's more product-focused, a little bit closer to Sam Altman. All right, next up, let's dive into Alex Shapiro's breakdown about how this AI legal tool was just not secured properly and what he found. So Alex is a security researcher, and there's this AI platform for legal work. It is called FileVine, and he discovered that there was a critical API vulnerability that exposed nearly 100,000 confidential files from a law firm instance. So that included attorney-client privileged communications, HIPAA-protected records, internal memos, and court documents. And because of an Amazon Web Services API endpoint that required zero authentication, it could return full admin credentials to a box file system with just a simple JSON request. Now, Shapiro responsibly disclosed the issue to FileVine in late October, and then the company confirmed and patched it by November 21st. And then he published his findings on December 2nd. So, he did the right thing. Hopefully nobody got anything leaked. But the idea that there could be these errors, like a $1 billion AI tool that's used for sensitive legal work had just a wide open API with no authentication. I mean, nuts. I can't expect there to be no mistakes. But, humans finding this stuff is going to be rare. AI can just go out on the internet all day long and find any weakness. And the instant it finds it, it could patch it if it's doing it for the right reasons, or it could exploit it if it's doing it for the wrong reasons. And everything's going to go so fast soon. And I hate to say we're in a race condition, but we kind of are. We kind of aren't, but we kind of are. And it underscores a broader industry problem where every startup is just rushing to kick AI out and get new users, and so many people want to use it that they're trying new products that aren't, super well vetted, and they're startups and they don't have enough resources to build this slow and carefully enough, or they're not using AI on their own end to actually secure things. So yeah, just remember, due diligence is important. Just because something has an AI feature, it doesn't guarantee that it's protected or the personal data is in place. In fact, AI just seems so loose. Every time I use it, I think, you pretty much remember this forever. I got a feeling somebody else could talk to an LLM at some point and pull it out the information I fed it, or at least some generalized version of it, and maybe even the specific data if it's not secured right. OpenAI had some history issues with their growing pains. Bigger companies obviously have more robust security built out, and they can kind of implement AI inside of some sandboxes where they've already secured it. And that's sort of comforting, but still, there's just so many new security issues, and I don't feel like any LLM is just truly unbreakable. So the Pew Research Center just put out a report. Turns out nearly half of U.S. adults say that dating has gotten harder for most people over the last 10 years. But even more shockingly, 62% of single women have given up on men. I mean, I got to admit, I don't feel like we're doing that great of a job as a gender, but you don't have to give up on us. The Guardian asked single women why they're not dating. One woman named Danielle said too many men have a problem with incel rhetoric, and that woman after woman repeated the same sentiments: incel, red pill, manosphere. But this Medium author, Linda Carroll, is arguing those guys are not the main reason 62% of young women have lost an interest in dating. It's the other guys who have been affected by them. 86% of men say they're stressed out because they're struggling financially and can't be a good provider like women expect them to be. But the TLDR is that there's a disconnect between what many single men and many single women currently want out of a relationship, with a notable percentage of women choosing independence over traditional dating. A bunch of guys in my audience that want to probably date women, so I feel like health, longevity, relationship stuff is still kind of important sometimes. All right, so here's some good news. Actually, you finally seem to have some control over your algorithm on Instagram. If this is truly what it seems like it is, and we got actual open access to algorithms, and there was a real marketplace for them, and you could sort of purchase them or vote with your attention in ways that were dictated by your choices, it would be such a big thing. We don't even have that option. But then if we had the option, then we could maybe start blaming people well, you chose to get thirst traps, so you deserve it, Right now we don't have that choice, and we're kind of forced onto these platforms because of the network effect. So it's not like we really can just go to any network, because not everybody's on every network. So when Instagram introduced the new AI-powered feature called Your Algorithm, I was pretty interested. It gives users a transparent look and some real control over the algorithm behind their Reels recommendation. I want to give them kudos. As much as I got a problem sometimes with how these social networks have been built, this is something we should thank for. Like, everyone go use this, because it'll show Meta that like the users actually do care about controlling their environment a little bit. Users can now see what topics Instagram thinks they're interested in based on your watch history and your engagement, and then you can add or remove topics to influence what content shows up in your feed in real time. So the aim here is to make the algorithm like a little bit less opaque, more personalized. It responds to your growing concerns about automated content curation and echo chambers. Now, it's not a fully open thing. There's an interesting play here. Meta can also take, the changes you're making to help them serve you better ads, to help them learn more about what people want. It's not just the interest of marketing, like selling an ad to you. At least now you can kind of say, well, I understand maybe a gambling ad, it would make the most money, but I'm not into it. And they're going to say, oh, well, we want him to actually keep being on the platform, getting the content that he wants. So maybe we'll try to give him whatever he wants and make as much advertising as we can there. So I'm not saying they're doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. I'm not all about it, but this tool needed to get built. I'm glad somebody built it. I'm glad it's a start. And Meta said they have plans to extend the tool beyond Reels to other parts of the app as it rolls out more globally. So take note, use it. I think it's powerful. I already did go in and adjust my topics. I'm trying to be smarter, trying to get less garbage, but I just don't need like war fights, news, thirst trap. Like, I'm just like, Jesus, like, just chill. I've been trying to get off short form, but it keeps sucking me back in. So yeah, let's actively shape the algorithm's behavior as a thoughtful group of citizens, okay? I know it's a big ask, but maybe it's a small step towards a safer future, a better future. Yeah, maybe even safer. Maybe it's a step towards alignment in the broadest sense, but not really, but kind of. Okay, so I wanted to show you this article because it's a little bit older. This was like from May, so it's not like exactly the newest version of Gemini or anything, but I came across it and I've been making this joke about basalier ganglia. I know it sounds like something someone really smart would say about the body that could be real, but I just never heard of it before, but it's not. It's hallucinated. Basalier ganglia. If you hear somebody being like, oh, my basalier ganglia is like, I'm so tired, I feel like it's not working, I didn't get this at first, but it's because it's a joke, it's a hallucination that made it into an actual medical thing that came from Gemini. So now that it's kind of like popping up a little bit, but basalier ganglia, if somebody says it, they're like trolling you, okay? And I just learned this. So back in May 2024, there was a research paper. It claimed that this Gemini model could interpret medical scans, right? So doctors were, checking it. There was an AI that confidently identified a condition involving the basalier ganglia, which is a body part that does not exist. Gemini appears to have mixed up two real structures, basal ganglia and basalier artery. Those two things actually exist in the world. Basalier ganglia is the fake body part that Gemini hallucinated. And I'm not saying humans that write these papers don't make mistakes. I probably would be surprised if a human hasn't made a sort of typo like that too, that's a body part that doesn't exist. But it just kind of shows that AIs can hallucinate, and I know we're getting better at them, but still, basalier ganglia, if you hear some jokes about it, now you know. Don't want you guys to get trolled on by the young generation, We're getting old, or I'm getting old, so I don't want those kids being like, look at that guy. Doesn't even know what basalier ganglia means. Now, if you don't mind getting your basalier ganglia focused on the hype button, go to your YouTube app, swipe on the comments, hit that hype button, help this. Dude, look at how many hypes I got on my last video. You guys used your basalier ganglia is so good. Look, that's for sure a record. Over 200,000 hype points came from 268 actual button presses. Boom, it like helped my video do so much better than average. Like you'd see at this point, I normally would have, that's engagement. Yeah, you could see normally at this point I would have maybe between 5.5 and 6.8 thousand views on a video. This one's at 10,000 and above. Dude, I got 100 new subscribers. I made $70. So yeah, man, those high points, they really help the channel grow. So, if you don't mind, if you made it this far, basalier ganglia, I'm out.